Hello and welcome to the Motorcycle Report. My name's Ryan, and if you're like me, you want to know all there is to know about the past, present, and future of the motorcycle world. And today, I'd like to talk about the fastest production motorcycles in history. Now, this doesn't include the fastest motorcycles as in racing or ever produced, but these were the fastest production motorcycles that the average consumer could buy from the inception of when motorcycles were first built. I'll have links in the description below to represent my research history. First on the list is the Hildebrand-Wolfmuller, which was produced from 1894 to 1897. It has a parallel twin 1500cc engine with 2.5 horsepower and a top speed of a blinding 25 to 28 miles per hour. Back then, I bet that was light speed. Next on the list is the Werner Motorcyclette, and it was produced from 1998 to 1900. It was a single 260cc engine, but it was kind of a step back in speed, going from 15.5 to 22 miles per hour, as it was the only motorcycle in production during those years, as the Hildebrand-Wolfmuller quit producing its motorcycles in 1897. So the Werner, that was produced from 1898 to 1900, even though it went slower than the Hildebrand-Wolfmuller, was the fastest production motorcycle at the time it was produced. Next on the list is the new Werner motorcycle, produced from 1901 to 1908. It had a single 230 to 333cc engine with 2 to 3.25 horsepower and a top speed of 30 miles per hour. Next on the list is the FN4, which was produced from 1911 to 1931. It had an inline-4 491cc engine with 6 horsepower and a top speed of 40 miles per hour. Next on the list is the Scott 2-Speed, which was produced from 1912 and doesn't have a stop production date, even though I'm sure they're not still making them. It had a parallel twin 532cc engine with 3 horsepower and a top speed of 50 miles per hour. Next on the list is the Williamson Flat Twin. It was produced from 1913 to 1920. It had a flat twin engine at 964 cc's and had a top speed of 55 miles per hour. Next on the list was the Pope Model L, which was produced from 1914 to 1920. It had a V-Twin 999cc engine with 12 horsepower and a top speed of 70 miles per hour in 1914. Man, that's fast. But one step better than that was the Cyclone V-Twin from 1916 to 1917. It was a V-Twin and had a 996cc engine with 25 horsepower and a top speed of 85 miles per hour. And the next motorcycle on the list falls into that category of not as fast as the previous one, but the only one in production at the time, which would be the Excelsior V-Twin, which was produced from 1918 to 1931. Had a V-Twin engine with 992 cc's, 20 horsepower, and could go 80 miles per hour. So 5 miles an hour less than the Cyclone V-Twin, but the V-Twin Cyclone was only produced from 1916 to 1917. Probably not a surprise to anyone, Brough Superior is next on the list. With the Brough Superior SS100, it was produced from 1925 to 1940. It had a V-Twin 998cc engine, 45 horsepower, and could travel 100 miles per hour, breaking that 100 mile per hour mark. The next two are Broughs as well, the first one being a Brough Superior SS100 Pendine, produced from 1927 to 1940. It had a V-Twin 981cc engine, 45 horsepower, and could travel at 110 miles per hour. The Brough Superior SS100 Alpine Grand Sport had the same top speed and was produced from 1934 to 1940. It had a V-Twin 996cc engine, 75 horsepower, and again 110 mile per hour top speed. The Crocker V Twin could match that 110 miles per hour, and it was produced from 1936 to 1941. It had a V-Twin 998cc engine, 50 horsepower, and top speed of 110 miles per hour. The Harley-Davidson F Knucklhead was a slight step down in speed, but it was the only motorcycle produced at 100 or 100 plus miles per hour from 1941 to 1947. It had a V-Twin 1212cc engine, 40 horsepower, and a top speed of 100 miles per hour. Well, then came along the Vincent Black Lightning. It was produced from 1949 to 1952. It had a V-Twin 998cc engine with 70 horsepower and a top speed in 1949 of 150 miles per hour. Whew. Go Greased Lightning. Go Greased Lightning. I wonder if that had anything to do with it. Go Greased Lightning, you burn up the quarter mile. Alright, so next on the list we have 3 motorcycles that did not surpass the Vincent Black Lightning, but since the Vincent Black Lightning was only produced from 1949 to 1952 and ceased production in 1952, the motorcycles that followed it in production then became the fastest motorcycles at the time of their production. First, we have the BSA Gold Star Clubman, which was produced from 1956 to 1963. It had a single 490cc engine, 42 horsepower, and a top speed of 110 miles per hour. Next is the Norton 650 SS, that was produced from 1962 to 1967. It had a parallel twin 646cc engine with 49 horsepower and a top speed of 110 to 115 miles per hour. The BSA Rocket 3, or Triumph Trident, was produced from 1968 to 1975. It had an inline 3 740cc engine, 58 horsepower, and 125 mile per hour top speed. Next on the list is the Kawasaki Z1, and it was produced from 1973 to 1975. It had an inline 4 903cc engine with 82 horsepower and a top speed of 132 miles per hour. Next on the list is the Ducati 900 SS. It was produced from 1975 to 1982. It had a V-Twin 864cc engine, 79 horsepower, and a top speed of 135 miles per hour. Next on the list is the Laverda Jota, produced from 1976 to 1981. It had an inline 3 981cc engine and produced 90 horsepower with a top speed of 140 to 146 miles per hour. So back to Vincent Lightning territory some 35 years later. It wasn't until 1984 and the Honda VF 1000R that we saw top speeds of 150 miles per hour again. The Honda VF 1000R was produced from 1984 to 1988. It had a V4 998cc engine, 122 horsepower, and a top speed of 150 miles per hour. The Kawasaki GPZ 900R Ninja topped the Honda from 1984 to 1996 with an inline 4 908cc engine, 113 to 115 horsepower, and a top speed of 151 to 158 miles per hour. Next on the list, the Kawasaki Tomcat ZX10 was produced from 1988 to 1990. It had an inline 4 990cc engine with 135 horsepower and a top speed of 165 miles per hour. Next on the list, the Bimota YB6 EXUP was produced from 1989 to 1990. It had an inline 4 1002cc engine with 147 horsepower and had a top speed of 170 miles per hour. Next on the list, Kawasaki Ninja returns with the ZX11, and it was produced from 1990 to 2001. It had an inline 4 1052cc engine, 145 horsepower, and a top speed of 169 to 176 miles per hour. The Honda CBR 1100 XX Super Blackbird could go a little bit faster, and it was produced from 1996 to 2007. It had an inline-4 1137cc engine with 162 horsepower, and its top speed was between 170 and 180 miles per hour. The famous Suzuki Hayabusa is next on the list, and I'll tell you why it was famous in a moment. And it's been produced from 1999 to current times. It has an inline-4 1299cc engine, 173 horsepower, and can travel between 188 and 194 miles per hour. And it was at this time that there was a gentleman's agreement, so to speak, put into place for all of the motorcycle production companies to regulate the speed of their motorcycles to keep them under 200 miles an hour, especially in England, where there were political concerns that there would be many accidents and problems with many road racers out trying to break the 200 mile per hour mark. That agreement has since fallen off in some ways, with Honda being the company to go ahead and agree to keep its bike, even to this day, under 200 miles per hour, with other companies not as concerned with it, in fact, or perhaps not wanting to come out and say that they're not going to produce a bike that goes over 200 miles per hour for all the right and maybe all the wrong reasons, depending on the company. But depending on how you look at speed, that can be a good thing or that can be a bad thing. Next on the list is the Kawasaki ZX-12R, and it was produced from 2000 to 2005. It has an inline-4 1199cc engine with 178 horsepower and can travel from 185 to 187 miles per hour. Next on the list is another Kawasaki, the ZX-14, produced from 2006 to the current time. It has an inline-4 1352cc engine with 163 horsepower and a top speed of 186 miles per hour. Now during this time, these following motorcycles are simply matching up with Hayabusa for other companies. Not that any of them could exceed its speed, but that is just to show that other motorcycle companies had motorcycles that could run up close to 200 miles per hour. There's two more in that group. The MV Agusta F4R 312, which was produced from 2007 to 2008. It has an inline-4 998cc engine, 183 horsepower, and could run from 185.4 miles per hour to 193.24 miles per hour. And the last of that group of motorcycles that were keeping it just under 200 miles per hour is the BMW S1000RR, which was produced from 2009 to current times. It has an inline-4 990cc engine, 199 horsepower, and a top speed of 188 miles per hour. Now on to the production motorcycles that have broken the 200 mile per hour barrier. The first being the Ducati Panigale R, which was first produced in 2013 and is still currently in production. It has a V-Twin 1198cc engine, 202 horsepower, and a top speed of 202 miles per hour or 325 kilometers per hour. And the last motorcycle on the list will be the fastest production motorcycle currently being made. And that's to say it's not a race bike or a track bike. It's simply made for the street and mass-produced for the public. And that's the Kawasaki Ninja H2. It was first produced in 2015 and is currently in production today. It has an inline-4 998cc engine, 200 horsepower, and a top speed of 209.442 miles per hour. Well, that ends this report. If you enjoyed this video and you'd like to see more, please click the subscribe button. Thank you, and I'll talk to you soon.